All right, baseball beat time. The World Series is finally here. Unfortunately, Will Schneider cannot join us today, but Anthony Sorbellini is here anyway. Help fill out the baseball beat. Anthony, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I have to say though, not super pumped about this World Series. It's not ideal.
No, it's funny because before we hopped on up on this show today, I was thinking, I was like, man, our picks were way off.
Yeah, I mean it was really bad. I just gotta say this probably I think for New York fans is probably the worst case scenario because the Met fans hate the Braves, the Yankee fans hate the Astros. Somebody's gonna be pissed off at the end of this World Series.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, as a Yankee fan, I'm even though I hate the Astros cheating scandal and everything, but I cannot deal with the Red Sox in the World Series with
Yeah,
that perspective of possibly winning. So
yeah. I mean, let's start with the Astros here. I mean, I've said throughout the postseason that it's sort of like the last stand for the Astros because Correa is a free agent after this year. There are a couple other big free agents here. They have a wild ride for the postseason where they take care of business against the White Sox pretty easily, but Boston, they're down 2-1 the series, and they have the pitch to change everything because Laz Diaz can't call a curveball a strike, and then they run away and never gain momentum back. So, what do you think
no,
about what the Astros have done so far?
no, not Laz Diaz being a questionable call, right? Not at all.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, like you definitely said it, and I know you touched on it in our preseason show and spring training show and everything like that. But like, this is kind of that last hoorah for this Astros core, you know. But I know we also definitely echoed and spoke upon that we didn't think, they could be World Series contenders, let alone, real possibility to most likely win it this year. You kind of figure they're going to be, one of the top three-ish teams along with like the Rays and the White Sox. But for what they did with the White Sox, it was kind of crazy. I believe, can't remember if I picked the White Sox to win the World Series this year, or I know I definitely picked them to go.
Yeah, I think you picked them going against the Dodgers losing.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, either way, the way they just dismantled the White Sox, and then in a sense too did the Red Sox. The Red Sox were just a scrappy team. It's the way they've been all year. I think I'm pretty sure they led the majors in comeback wins all season. So that's kind of like been their MO the entire season. Like they're not gonna just crawl around and just give up. Essentially, they're always gonna be there. But also the Astros aren't strangers to this, given, essentially a new manager. This is what, Dusty Baker's second year, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
second year with them, and then
So this
and
is second year with them, but and the cheating scandals, obviously, they still got fans, signs, things like that, and everything along those lines. But for them to, just go out and just continue to just play and just, especially with missing a key guy like George Springer and losing him, it's kind of crazy. It just speaks to, those guys just coming up key and everything.
yeah, they definitely had a very interesting run. Also, the team in the moment right now is the Braves. Obviously, they get into the postseason, the least wins in the playoffs. The NL East suck. They managed to sneak in there. Brewers can't hit. They win that round. Then they jump out on the Dodgers 3-0, manage to avoid the choke, and then win the series in six in Atlanta. So I think, obviously, for me, I'm not happy about it, but I feel like if you're a general baseball fan, this is a very fun story.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because, they've had that choking experience in the past. It's good to see them get over the hump. And, this is their first time making a World Series appearance since the 90s when they had essentially a dynasty. For the most part, it was, the Braves and the Yankees going at it back and forth for quite a number of years back in the 90s. So to see, a sort of small market team, but at the end of the day, they're a young team. Unfortunately, Acuna Jr. is out for the year, so you're not going to see him in there. But being able to see what they're still doing and coming into the playoffs and into the World Series as the hottest team in baseball, that's the momentum you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those two getting there is a great story. I think the story of the postseason, though, in my opinion, I don't know if you agree with me on this. The lack of starting pitching that these teams have, I think it's just such a problem for the sport as a whole because these games are momentum killers. I don't want to be seeing bullpen games in game four of the NLCS because you don't have enough starting pitching. And we're stretching Matt Scherzer. We're making him pitch on 2 days rest out of the bullpen and stuff like that. And then he can't go in game six. Like This to me is exactly what's wrong with this sport and what's like driving it down the rabbit hole where all these games are 4 hours because nobody can get it out and we're working the bass to death. The lack of pitching is driving insane.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's kind of funny because that's kind of been the opposite with the postseason. It was always when you're going to see, you always think of Madison Bumgarner a couple of years ago when he was out there just literally inhuman, going out there on, what was it, 2 days rest, things like that, and coming back the next night after making a start to make a save. It's unheard of. But I'm curious to see if the starting pitching woes are, or the pitching woes in general, I should just say, is if there's any correlation between, the umpires cracking down on foreign substances. It's just something to explore. Think of it like this, it's October, it's late September, cold weather, everything, you're not having whatever you're used to having on wherever give you that extra grip. There's a possibility, things to explore, but you also never know. It's a long season. So, I mean, Scherzer was expressing that, yeah, I essentially had a dead arm. So, but I mean, that's unfortunately the nature of the sport. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint. You just have to get into the playoffs. And as we see with the Braves, anything could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my problem is that I think these teams are undervaluing starting pitching too much. I think that's the issue I'm having is that like they're basically saying, oh, go throw as hard as you can for as short as you can, and we'll just run a parade of relievers in here. And like we don't need a starter for every game. We'll just run all the relievers out for one day because we can. And I think that's just sort of driving this thing to drink. And where look at this last week of the podcast, like I feel like every postseason game is at least 3.5 hours, if not 4. And that's not the way you want this thing to be going here.
No, especially when they're trying to implement things to make the game shorter, right?
Yeah.
But just to echo your point, your point to where they're devaluing starting pitching. We've seen this trend for years, right? Yeah. It started when in 2014, I believe it was, right? 2014 when the Royals lost in the World Series. They had that power bullpen, and it was like, oh, if I get a solid 5, maybe 6 innings out of my starter, give it to the bullpen and you're good. Yeah. So we've seen that trend, grow each and every year to where the point to where it's just if a starter can give you 4, you're like, sweet, I got a good bullpen. But it's even to the point now to where the bullpens aren't even producing.
Yeah, I think to me, honestly, the problem, I think it's something that they do need to legislate out of the sport, whether it's by shrinking the pitching staffs down to a point where you can't just max out arms. It's something actually done here. I think this is a big reason why that these games are dragging on as long as they are, because they're not training pitchers to actually pitch. They're just telling them just to throw as hard as they can.
And that's what it is. I mean, it's literally just go out there, just go get an out.
Yeah.
But it's to the point to where these guys are out there so much that they can't.
Yeah. And these whole ridiculous idea like, oh, he started 2 days ago in 5 innings. We can use him out of the bullpen for 2 innings tonight. And then, wait, what? He can't pitch again on his regularly scheduled turn? That makes no sense. I'm like, of course, it's been that way for 100 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a slippery slope that whether it be Manfred and the rest of the league office need to look into, or if it's just something that teams are going to have to adapt to and just change. Because, I agree with you. I know the 3 of us, including Will, have said like, oh, like we love the sport how it is now. We don't want to see it shortened, but also 4.5 hours for every game in the postseason is a little ridiculous.
It is. And I think also I'm going to pinpoint that 2019 Washington World Series where they basically use 3 stars and 2 relievers to pitch every inning of every game. That's every team's not trying to copy that. And it's not going to work. They're human beings. They can't work like that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You throw roughly 30 games if you're a starting pitcher each season, just in the regular season. And then depending on how far your team goes, if you even make it to the playoffs, that's postseason. It's going to be what? Let's say if your team makes it to the World Series, it's going to be at least a minimum of maybe 4 or 5 starts.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an extra, let's say these pitchers are going, depending on how bad they're getting beaten. Let's say probably they're throwing, I think it's realistic to say they're throwing a minimum of 70 to 80 pitches.
Yep.
And it just adds up.
It absolutely does. And I think let's get to the actual matchup here, the Astros and the Braves. And what do you think of the keys for the Astros here in this series? What do you think they have to do to win it?
In all honesty, I think the Astros, I don't think they have to do anything special. They're kind of they're under the radar in the sense that we're used to seeing this team in this position, or at least these core group of guys. But there's so much public scrutiny, of course, of everything that happened years ago when they won the World Series and everything of the cheating scandal. But they're just going out and they're producing, they're not a young team. They're sort of a young team, but they're not young in the sense that they don't have postseason experience. To whereas the Braves, they mostly are in the sense, especially World Series experience.
Yeah, I think you're right on it. They really have to continue just embracing being the villain, knowing that the majority of America is rooting against them in this series and just thrive on it like they've done throughout the postseason. I think if they can just accept, hey, we're the bad guys and nobody wants us to win and just take it us against the world mentality, I think that's really going to help bring the best out of their games.
Yeah, that's honestly as simple as it is, and I'd be surprised if Dusty Baker's not echoing that to some degree, or if he hasn't been echoing that to throughout the entire season. But that's just what they have to do. They knew they were gonna come into last season, especially, and then this season, and probably next season as well, regardless of whatever this outcome is, and probably seasons for at least 5 years, to where they're going to have those targets on their backs. So if the sooner you can embrace it and just go out and just play your game, the easier it's going to be. And look where they are now. So I would imagine if I'm, in that clubhouse of some sort and hearing Dusty and, the rest of that coaching staff preach to those guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they're echoing something like that to some degree.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As far as the Braves go, what do you think is the key for them? How do they win this series?
The thing is, for the Braves, it's the complete opposite, right? Because a large majority of this team has never been anywhere close to this. And like I said, it's a bunch of young guys, but I think the key they need to do, ride the momentum that they've had the entire postseason. Just don't change anything too drastically. Of course, you have to adjust each game and adjust, each game plan to, different starting pitching, different guys, everything like that. Completely different staff in the Astros and than what they've played so far in the postseason. They just have to continue to get those key timely hits and everything that they've been doing and enjoy the moment, but also don't get too lost in it. Don't get too starstruck, like, oh, this is the World Series. Because at the end of the day, it is still baseball. It's still the same exact game that they've been playing the entire season.
Yeah, I also think for them the key is that lineup has to keep producing because they knocked the Dodgers out. They outslug. They have to outslug that Houston lineup. That's their only shot here. I don't think they're gonna pitch enough to shut Houston
Well,
down.
I mean, what Rosario did in the NLCS is, well, I think the stat was he batted 500.
Yes. Yeah.
If you can even get a fraction of that from him, like let's say if him, other key guys, if they can average 300,
Yeah.
you're gonna be in it.
Yeah, I think they are. And what's your World Series prediction? Who wins how many games?
I want to say it's a coin flip, but my gut's telling me the Astros. I want to say the Astros. I'm going to give the Astros in 6. The Braves aren't going to go away easily, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm giving it to the Astros just because they've been here before.
Yeah,
I think people definitely don't give that much giving experience that much attention.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have Astros in 6 as well. I think it's just, you said the experience factors be too much for them to overcome. Plus, important to know here, Houston has home field. That's very important.
Yeah. As as Yankee fans are well know that home field advantage makes quite a difference, and if you have it, and especially if you don't have it. So if something happens where it goes to Game 7, you want to play Game 7 at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we go here, we'll take 1 minute, a couple minutes on this big news around the local teams right now. The Yankees, as much as a lot of fans don't like it, Aaron Boone is back for 3 more years. The solution seems to be we're going to change the coaching staff. We're going to keep the manager. Maybe we'll shake the roster up. Like, what do you think about what's going on now over there?
I mean, if you're going to get rid of the entire coaching staff, why don't you just get rid of Boone, right?
Yep.
I know I said from the get-go, ever since we started the baseball beat and everything, I've never been a fan of Boone.
Yeah.
Why keep him? I mean, what has he shown you to be like that he's worth keeping? Every year they've regressed. It's
Yeah,
not every year they've gotten better, or worst case scenario, they stay stagnant, if keep getting to the ALCS and losing at the ALCS.
yeah,
I mean, that's one thing,
yeah,
but they're regressing each and every year.
yeah,
I don't see the point of it. In all honesty, I know it's not going to happen. I would love to see an entire front office mix up. That's just not going to happen. I think you need to get fresh faces in there. Get somebody else instead of Cashman, or give him an assistant or something, just somebody new to give him a fresh perspective, because what the Yankees are doing right now is they're stuck so much in the Bronx bomber mentality that it's biting them in the butts, to where you bring in a guy like Joey Gallo, like, oh yeah, his OPS is over 1,000 or whatever it was at the time, but he still strikes out
a lot.
a lot.
Yeah,
Like, why would I want a guy who's going to strike out at least probably once a game, if not more, for him to just hit a home run once or twice a week?
yeah,
It doesn't make sense. Solo home runs don't win games. I really want the Yankees to go back to that mentality of the late 90s, early 2000s, where you have your guys who can get on base, your singles, your doubles, and the occasional triple. And then you have those two or three, it's two power hitters that can get those guys in. That's what's going to win your ball games. You can't be relying too much on Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge. As much as I love Judge, he is a liability.
yeah. I think also two things about this whole thing is, number one, Brian Cash is a very stubborn man. He's not want to admit he made a mistake on Aaron Boone, which is why Aaron Boone is still here. Because the thing I also frustrated me was they had this whole mentality like, oh, we need a bad cop because Aaron Boone is too nice to players. Like, then why are you keeping Aaron Boone if you need a bad cop in here to do the job that Aaron Boone can't do?
Yeah, it's funny. My stepdad has this whole philosophy that Aaron Boone's a yes man. So it's not even really Boone calling all the shots from the day to day, whether it be the lineup or whatever, that it's actually coming from, whether it be Cashman or, House, Tanbrunner, whomever it may be. But yeah, I think to your point, Boone is too nice. He's
Yeah.
kind of got to get that extra little. He's got to. I mean, that's just who he is. It's who he's always been. He's not going to change overnight. He's not going to probably even going to change at this point.
Yeah, I also think the other problem here, the are just too content in their process. I think one of my friends who was on here a couple weeks ago, our legal guy Phil Fryette, was actually on this episode later. We're talking about the Washington football team email situation, but he made a point. He said that the organization right now is just very arrogant. They feel like their way is the right way. It's just a matter of, oh, the results have not come. Our process is not flawed. And I think I saw this when we had the press release that they put out, the brilliant one, where they said that Aaron Boone has the third highest winning percentage in his first 4 years as a Yankee manager compared to, I think, Joe Torre and Casey Stengel, the other two ahead of him. I'm like, that's such a ridiculous argument because those guys
Also,
won 7 World Series combined over that time span, and Aaron Boone's not even been to one.
that's
It's
going
such
to be my
a,
counter argument was, how many World Series have they won?
yeah, they've won 7. He's not even been to one. It's like they're content to just be in the mix and sell the chicken buckets and sell the sweets as opposed to like,
That's what it is. They're content with being mediocre. It's as long as fans are in the stands. That's
yeah,
what it is.
yeah, they care more about being good enough to get in the tournament than say, oh, it's baseball. We can't you can only get in, and it's a random crapshoot once you get there. But at the same time, like these teams are finding out ways to win the postseason. Tampa's there all the time. They go to the World Series. The Dodgers been to the World Series like 3 times since 2016. Yankees haven't been there in 11 years. Something at the process is wrong.
Yeah, it's just like I said, it's not going to happen. I really wish it would happen, but they need to shake everything up. Just flip everything upside down. I think the biggest mistake that they made is getting rid of Girardi when they did.
Yeah. Well, they got rid of
Don't
him.
get me wrong. If you wanted to get rid of Girardi, I think you should have given him at least 2 more years just to see, because he literally took a skeleton squad to within 1 game of the World Series.
They're not even come close. They're not even reached that point since then.
Not even. Like I said, ever since Boone, they've regressed every year.
Yeah. I also think the other thing that's fascinating with them, you think about it, is this idea that they fired Girardi because he was too mean to Gary Sanchez. Now, Gary Sanchez has not done a damn thing since Aaron Boone has taken over.
It's funny. I thought Gary Sanchez, you know, there was a glimpse of him being his rookie self.
But
Nope.
no, nope.
No.
Yeah, and I'm gonna wrap up here with the Mets. The front office search still ongoing here. They went over three of their big candidates. I'm not worried about it right now because obviously I think the media's trying to make a big deal about, oh, they haven't gotten anybody yet. They've known about it for a month. They shot for the moon and the stars. They missed. That's fine. But I think if you're getting too far past World Series without having this front office in place, that's a problem because with this rigorous work stoppage coming, and you know it's coming because they're not going to agree to a deal before December 1st. There's be a lot of action happening in November here. I think you need to have people in place to start that process. I don't care about the manager. I think you need to have the front office at least in the process of going there, have that head guy in.
Yeah, you just it's kind of like unorganized chaos, right? You want to kind of have some sense of organization.
Yeah.
You just got to get a game plan. That's what you got to go into it. You know, we've seen a lot of crazy stuff happening in off seasons. So as long as you have, you know, kind of as cliche as it is, you know, a captain at the helm, you're good to go. Someone with a solid game plan, you know, build off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anthony, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, I'll be on social media. Keep up some of the stuff you're up to.
Yeah, you can check me out on Instagram at Sorbellini Photos. And kind of a bittersweet moment for me coming up on Tuesday is my final game covering Iona Athletics. As later in the week, I will be heading to Chapel Hill, and later next week, we'll be starting a new position as a athletics photographer for UNC Tar Heels. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, congratulations from us and
Thank
the
you, thank
listeners.
you,
Thank you again for all the time. I really appreciate it. And best of luck
thank
in North
you.
Carolina.
I appreciate it. Thank you.